Goddamn fucking shit. I'm just using a camera mic and streaming from my camera. If anyone's listening, um, here, let me just play some music or something so you can hear in the background. If you are checking up on the stream, this is, let's see. Okay, let's just play some music for you. Or here, we're watching a Vietnam documentary so you can hear the audio coming from that.
The Americans. Having grown up with a mother and father who both served in World War II, for me, war was like the John Wayne movies.
We're going to hold this town till the link up does come, whenever it is. Today, tomorrow, till hell freezes over.
It was your duty, and it was a privilege, and we were always fighting on the side of right. America was always the good guys. But the harsh reality of what war really was very different from what I'd seen in my mother's Army scrapbooks, where my mother was the football queen at the Army-Navy game. War is a very scary thing, especially as we faced high school graduation. I could name one name after another of my brother's friends who went off to fight. And their letters to my brother and to me were very, very different. To me, the letters always had the number of days left. They were counting the days before they would come home. For my brother, they were describing the realities of what they were doing. Horrific realities. And the reality of what that war represented and what conversations about the war resulted in began to hit us. Things were just not right in America. Everything that I admired about our country, everything that I associated with the American dream, everything I associated with America, right or wrong, it was just disappearing. And it made it a lot easier to take a stand against my own government. At that point, you had to make a choice. Are you willing to put your life on the line? And for many of us, it was. It was worth the risk.
The United States did an incredible job keeping track of the amount of bombs it dropped on Vietnam. That's how we know the United States dropped more bombs on Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia than it did in all of World War II on Europe.
You have around 7 million tons of bombs dropped over the countries of Indochina. This included anywhere from 500 to 600,000 tons of bombs dropped over Cambodia, 2 million over Laos, 1 million over North Vietnam, and over 4 million dropped over South Vietnam.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
After Lyndon Johnson announces that he's not going to seek another term, he announces that he's going to stop bombing North Vietnam if the North Vietnamese will agree to prompt, productive peace talks. And the negotiating team meets in Paris. And in October, Johnson finally gets the North Vietnamese to accept his conditions.
On the afternoon of October 27th, word came from Paris that Hanoi would accept the terms for a bombing halt.
So Johnson agrees to halt the bombing.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. I have now ordered that all air, naval, and artillery bombardment of North Vietnam cease as of 8 a.m. Washington time, Friday morning.
Those of us who served in Vietnam, we obviously were hopeful. Every day, young men getting killed, young men getting wounded. We just want to get out of here now. We were fighting not for victory, we were fighting to go home.
Americans get excited about there being a bombing halt and peace talks. This is shortly before the 1968 election.
But the President of the United States and his ambassadors are making a determined, major, massive effort to find an honorable peace in Paris.
At this point, the major candidates are Hubert Humphrey, Johnson's vice president, as the Democratic nominee, and Richard Nixon for the Republicans.
Richard Nixon had run for president in 1960 and been defeated by President John Kennedy. But he had slowly and meticulously fought his way back into prominence in the Republican Party.
It's a heartland state. Whoever wins Indiana has a good chance to win the rest of the heartland and therefore the country.
But the biggest thing that Nixon had to sell, and he sold it very well, was that he would end the war.
I say the time has come for the American people to turn to new leadership, not tied to the policies and mistakes of the past. I pledge to you, we shall have an honorable end to the war in Vietnam.
But he really is not forthcoming with any strategy for ending the war throughout the course of the 68 campaign.
If a candidate for president who might be president says that if negotiations fail, I will do this or that, the people on the other side of the negotiating table will say, well, we'll wait for him rather than negotiate with President Johnson. But peace is too important for politics as usual. So I say, let's let the President of the United States.
At the start of October, Nixon was 15 points ahead of Hubert Humphrey. He was winning a landslide. But the more news came out of Paris that these peace talks were going to start, the more people's hopes got up for the prospect of getting some sort of settlement of the Vietnam War. And then Johnson learns that Richard Nixon might be secretly trying to torpedo the bombing halt negotiations.
We have found that our friend, the Republican nominee, our California friend, has been playing on the outskirts with our enemies and our friends both, our allies and the others. One of his associates said to a businessman that we're going to say to Hanoi, I can make a better deal than he has because I'm fresh and new and I don't have to demand as much as he does in the light of past position.
Johnson is stunned. He thinks that Nixon was trying to sabotage the peace talks. He starts checking his sources of intelligence. The CIA has a bug in the office of the president of South Vietnam, Nguyen Van Thieu. And Johnson orders the FBI to put surveillance on the South Vietnamese embassy, to tell him the names of everybody who enters and exits, and to tail a lady named Anna Chennault, who is a unique figure in Republican politics at that time.
She was the widow of a very famous World War II aviator who knew President Thieu.
The people are very much concerned, and the number one question they ask is this: who is going to win this war?
She was one of a few Asian American delegates to the Republican convention that year. And she was Richard Nixon's top female fundraiser.
Mrs. Chennault is contacting their ambassador from time to time. Seems to be kind of the go-between.
Chennault is telling the South Vietnamese government to stay away from these peace talks that Nixon can give them a better deal once he's elected president.
The net of it was that if they just hold out a little bit longer, that he's a lot more sympathetic and they can do better business with him than they can with their present president. Now, I rather doubt Nixon has done any of this, but there's no question but what folks for him are doing it.
Mrs. Shandor never saw President Thieu, nor did we take it seriously because, hey, we go through the U.S. Embassy, okay? That's the official conduct.
The Vietnamese knew their future was being decided in Washington, D.C.
Thieu always thought that the Americans are going to screw him somehow, that they would sell him out to Hanoi.
And frankly, the reason South Vietnamese did not send a delegation to the Paris talks at that time was this. We say to the US, what's the strategy between allies? We cannot go there and you guys just take over thinking that this is what is the best for South Vietnamese. We need to be aligned. We never got a good answer.
And on the Saturday before the election, November 2nd, Nguyen Van Thieu announces that he will not send a delegation to the Paris peace talks. Okay.